Hello all, and welcome to NetApp's Insight 2020, Birds of a Feather presentation. I am Lloyd Granville, Chief Technology Officer for the DoD and Intel team here at NetApp. This year's discussion will focus on differing agency successes and best practices we at NetApp have come across over the past year. Today, we will be discussing current trends and solutions that are happening in the U.S. Department of Defense, military services, intelligence agencies, and with our federal system integration partners. These solutions will hopefully provide some insight into the latest hybrid cloud technologies, architectures, and the benefits of building a data fabric. Next slide. We will pause for a moment as you read our standard confidentiality notice. Next slide. Now let's meet the specialist. I myself spent 23 years in the United States Army Signal Corps as a network engineer, supporting conventional and special operations mission sets, recently retiring at the rank of Chief Warrant Officer 4. I hold several technical certifications, advanced degrees in the IT field, and I'm currently completing my PhD in cybersecurity. I now serve as NetApp's Deputy CTO for the DoD and intelligence community. Joining me today will be Dr. Greg Gardner, who has had a distinguished 30-year career in the Army, retiring at the rank of colonel before joining NetApp. Dr. Gardner holds advanced degrees in the IT field and spent several years serving in executive positions, such as the VP of Public Sector Strategy at Oracle and as the Deputy CIO of the U.S. Army Intelligence Community. Greg will be joined by three of our public sector's top engineers who are deploying systems within a wide range of government agencies. Following Greg will be Eddie Huerta, who has over 20 years of experience with data center architectures, DoD, tactical communications, and 8 years with NetApp, both as a professional services consultant and now as a solutions engineer. Eddie has 22 years of military service in the Air Force with 10 years on active duty. He continues to serve in the Air National Guard, going on his 12th year with the 147th Combat Communications Squadron in San Diego as their superintendent of plans and resources flight. Vic Guerra has over 20 years of experience architecting DoD special operations tactical and garrison data centers. For the last decade, Victor was the senior civilian technical engineer at the Joint Communications Unit on Fort Bragg and a systems engineer for the Joint Special Operations Command. He has 20 years of DoD service combined as an active duty Marine for the Marine Corps Special Operations Command, Detachment 1, and a government civilian. Vic has been with NetApp a little over 1 year now as a solutions engineer for the Air Force team. Finally, from our intelligence team, we have Jim Kleinmeyer, who has over 35 years of experience with engineering, design, and support of data processing systems for the federal government. Jim's professional credentials include 3 patents and 15 peer-reviewed publications with over 3,500 citations. Jim holds an advanced engineering degree from the U.S. Army Materiel Command, School of Engineering, as well as a bachelor's in electrical engineering from Florida Atlantic University. As you listen to today's session, we hope that you find the information meaningful and that you come away from today's session with a new perspective of how NetApp can help you achieve your mission objectives. Without further ado, we will begin with Dr. Greg Gardner, our Chief Architect. Next slide.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be here with you today. I have been at NetApp for 10 years, and it's probably been the most satisfying decade of my life in the workspace. I really enjoy it here. My purpose today is to talk about key trends in the Department of Defense, and I'm going to focus within that area on artificial intelligence. But first, let's talk a little bit about NetApp's performance in the DoD. Our purpose in the Department of Defense is to help defense organizations lead with data. And as you can see on this slide, we've been pretty successful at that over the past few years. Why are we number one? Well, we help folks deal with the complexities of managing dynamic data in a variety of different environments, and we help with the highest return on investment of any storage vendor that's out there. And all that's really good, but really it's these four things up here that are key to what makes NetApp number one. Our ability for data mobility, data storage efficiency, data security, and cloud integration. And all taken together, they tie together to form our data fabric. Those are the key pieces that make us valuable to our defense customers, and they make us very valuable to folks in NATO and in the federal government as well. You'll see details of each one of these as we go through the presentations. But over to DoD now. So this is the DoD's budget priorities for this fiscal year. I want to highlight the fact that innovative technologies are really key to the Department of Defense, and the purpose of embracing those innovative technologies is to improve our competitive advantage over near-peer competitors around the world. The Government for Artificial Intelligence Initiatives is really very interesting. So for the whole rest of the federal government, not including the Department of Defense, this year's budget's about $209 million. Not to be sneezed at, but not a lot, relatively. Last year, the DoD spent over about $1.5 billion on artificial intelligence. This year, the budget's over $4 billion. So why the threefold increase, and why 19 to 20 times more than the rest of the federal government combined? Well, the answer is the threat. China has made it very clear that they intend to be a world leader in artificial intelligence in the next couple decades. And the Department and the DoD, or the Secretary of Defense, has been very clear that this is not acceptable to us, and we're going to fight them every step of the way. So what's the DoD doing about that? Well, the strategy for artificial intelligence in the DoD was captured in this 2018 document. And the specific parts of that strategy are shown here. There's one part I want to highlight, and that's the establishment of a common foundation that enables decentralized development and experimentation for artificial intelligence across the department. An example of that is what's going on in the Army. This is a OV1 diagram of the Army's Titan program. I want to highlight that you see in these three red circles in the upper left-hand side that artificial intelligence and machine learning is key to this solution for the Army. So we are working with several systems integrators to provide support and capabilities for those artificial intelligence and machine learning solutions that are required. At the edge and working into the core, our hybrid cloud infrastructure compute model, together with our partner NVIDIA, is helping us get the benefits you see there in the green box. And more broadly, these full rack and dual rack solutions you see on the right-hand side are what we're going to put in ground stations for the Titan solution. And at the bottom left-hand corner, you see a new entry into the NetApp family, and that's our NetApp Edge device, which allows us to ingest data from the edge, do artificial intelligence with it, and process it, and make that processed information available to edge users. A second example of what we're doing is working with Special Operations Command on their predictive aircraft maintenance solution. The gentleman you see here is Tony Thomas, who is the former commander of Special Operations Command. But the quote you see there on the left-hand side is an example of how much the SOCOM team is embracing artificial intelligence and making it part of everything they do. So let's take a look at this in a little more detail. In the past, the Army's been using artificial or data analytics for a long time, capturing the data at sensors on there, particularly on their aircraft engines. And then when the aircraft land, they pull the box off the aircraft and do some analytics on it to take a look at the performance of the bird. That's old school technology, and what our artificial intelligence allows us to do is what's shown on the right-hand side of this diagram, and that is to take data from those sensors, from those Internet of Things devices at the edge, process that information, cycle it back to train the algorithms, and then use that information not only to inform the pilot while he's in flight, but also to improve the ability to maintain the aircraft both while it's in the air and once it comes back into land. We're doing this work hand in glove with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, at Fort Campbell. And the solution involves a NetApp A220 device with NVIDIA team devices woven into it. And you can see we're working with the Carnegie Mellon team to bring the data science and data engineering aspects into this solution. The final example I want to talk about is work we're doing with the United States Marine Corps with our NetApp A800s and the DGX A100 from NVIDIA, tying those things together to provide the Marine Corps with a really top-notch cybersecurity solution that allows the Marine Corps to analyze data from millions of cyber incidents and bring them all together into a solution factor that we're beginning to share with other elements of the public sector and the federal government. And with that rundown on what's hot in the DoD, I'm going to hand it off to Eddie Huerta, a great Navy systems engineer and aspiring PGA pro. Here you go, Eddie.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Hello, everyone. As Greg mentioned, I'm an SE on the Navy team, and yes, at a PGA Tour aspiring professional. And I want to walk you through a customer success story when it comes to hybrid cloud. But before I begin, I want to take this opportunity to thank all my teammates who support me and ultimately the Navy in this effort. There's a wealth of specialists at NetApp and who are so gracious with their time and expertise. We definitely don't succeed alone, and it truly is a team effort. So if you go to the next slide, Greg. So up in the right-hand corner, you can see the mission of this specific Navy customer. You can see what they do. They have a significant investment in NetApp. And as we were discussing some of their challenges, there were really three main areas of focus: data growth, cloud integration with their on-prem investment, and disaster recovery. So, I mean, data growth is pretty much inevitable now, but this customer is experiencing a rapid increase of data growth, a data explosion, as my teammate Frank Alcantar likes to say, specifically on their SSD tier within their hybrid cluster. And we evaluated three options to address this challenge. The first was to simply add more SSD capacity, which can bring significant value on workloads that can take advantage of our deduplication, compression, and compaction, but we know that does incur a higher cost. The second option was to add a capacity tier or SAS tier, but wasn't really ideal because we'd obviously have to accept a lower performance standard. And the third option was much more compelling, which was to deploy a private cloud solution at a fraction of the cost, enable our fabric pool technology, and tier inactive data from their SSD tier, which was nearing max capacity, to a lower cost object tier using StorageGRID, highlighted in the slide. And this conversation came from something we did a month prior, which was to turn on a feature in ONTAP called inactive data reporting, which gives us a report on how much user data is inactive. And we found that between all the SSD tiers, 45% of their data was inactive. And this was compelling because, you know, we were actively using the data to make the right decision. So option three is what we press forward with. And when we look at the value of this private cloud solution, you know, not only are we able to save on cost, but as a key component of the data fabric, you know, StorageGRID now adds value as an API repository. And this API repository is for their developers as they start to move applications into the cloud. Now, when we talk about cloud as it relates to the Navy, it's important to note that the Navy has a cloud first initiative, and that doesn't mean they're going to move everything into the cloud, but it's intended to accelerate the pace at which agencies in the Navy evaluate safe, secure cloud options before making any new investments. So as we worked on some different scenarios and evaluated cloud solutions with this particular customer, we discussed their need for an API repository moving to the cloud and their current disaster recovery solution, which today is relied heavily on tape media, tape libraries, shipping those tapes off site, which has become cumbersome and for this particular customer, very expensive. This is where, you know, data fabric continues to extend that strategic value of data mobility and availability in a hybrid multi-cloud architecture. And we achieve this with Cloud Volumes ONTAP. as we can see in the center of the slide, being able to extend SnapMirror technology to replicate offsite into a secure public cloud brings value to this customer. And what the customer appreciates here is having a common enterprise data management from on-prem into multi-cloud providers. And why that's important is because of the data. We know data is monolithic. We know data has weight. It's hard to move petabytes of data and have it available when and where you need it. So when it comes to data mobility and digital transformation, it's not just about the technology. It's about that strategic value of data mobility with the NetApp Data Fabric. So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope it brought value to you. And now I'd like to turn it over to my teammate, Vic Guerra, who's also an SC here at NetApp.
Thank you, Eddie. As is stated here, I'm actually an SC for the Air Force, yet all my experience has actually been with the Special Operations Command in the world. Next slide, Greg. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of the features and capabilities that I'll be briefing were done in the ARs that fell under General Thomas. The products listed here helped extend the customer's data fabric, but the one that is front and center is StorageGrid. StorageGrid, in this case, provided an on-prem cloud solution, a disaster recovery solution, a central repository of data, a search engine, but also a platform to tag and change metadata. This was especially crucial to the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, as we know it, the ISR world. StorageGrid allowed the customer to store and tag the ISR that was relevant versus storing 5 hours of video. Now they can store 30 minutes of video and tag it with the metadata that was important to the customer, which resulted in smaller footprints for their data centers. And when data centers are forward deployed, power, HVAC, physical space, are always a premium. In the battlefield, forward operating bases stand up and stand down quite often and very fast. Clustered Data ONTAP, our operating system, and StorageGrid now enable this customer to stand up or down sites very rapidly and not have to worry about physically moving petabytes of data from one site to another due to site shutdowns or moves. Enabling the customer to move data between traditional FAS, AFF, and HCI onto StorageGrid allowed the customer to really expand their data fabric and posture them to be cloud ready for their data centers. One of the problems that this customer faced were FOIA requests. FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act. It is a federal law that requires the full or partial disclosure of previously unreleased information and documents controlled by the United States government upon request. So essentially, when an organization needs information that the government is holding on to, they can request it, and if granted, federal organizations have to dig that up and provide it. The customer who owns fast systems with petabytes of data globally needed a central repository to be able to be searched versus searching systems independently one at a time for that data. StorageGrid provided the customer with a central repository of archived and historical data that can now be easily managed and searched while cutting down the FOIA request responses from weeks to just hours. Along with cutting the FOIA requests down significantly, this also reduced the manpower that was needed to perform the same task. The on-prem cloud repository was definitely a game changer for them. I also like to discuss how NetApp HCI simplified and standardized the customer's data centers. By removing the native fiber switches, which were complex to set up, but yet this customer saw no gain by having them in their data centers. Introducing the iSCSI to their fabric meant faster data center deployment times and less components to troubleshoot. The data centers, all of which were built at different times and were located across the globe, can now be scaled up or down because the HCI storage and compute is added independently and not have to worry about systems overhead usage. The HCI was a much smaller footprint in the customer's data center, but yet had more resources available to them than the existing architecture that was currently being used. Another advantage that HCI brought to the table was the need for less hypervisor licenses, since you only have to license the compute nodes. Along with our operating system, Clustered Data ONTAP, NetApp HCI was adopted into its customers' unit training and is now being taught as the standard for its organization due to its use of management. The products listed on the slide were the keys to the organization's digital transformation And with that, I would like to turn it over to our Intel SE, Jim.
Thank you, Vic, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate your support and participation in this unique event. I'd also like to talk to you today about a very important program focused on data security. The National Security Agency has been a partner of NetApp for over 20 years. At NetApp, we're very proud of this partnership in supporting their mission and the DoD intelligence community as a whole. And along these lines, a particular area of interest to our community is their Commercial Solutions for Classified program, also known as CSFC. This program is an important part of the NSA's cybersecurity strategy for quickly delivering accredited commercial solutions for the storage of top secret and secret data in the field. Under this program, the agency publishes a standard, also known as a capabilities package, that vendors like NetApp can test against and present their results to an independent organization known as NIAP for certification. The current release of CP is version 4. At our sponsor's request, NetApp is in the process of submitting our test results against this release. It's important for me to point out that CP4 does not include the requirements for a much-needed remote key management capability. But given our long history with the community and our experience in this area, dating back over 15 years to NetApp's acquisition of Decru in 2005, NetApp is currently working closely with our sponsor and NIAP towards a draft CP that will include this much-needed capability known as KMIP. So what does this really all mean to our community? The impact is that for global deployment systems, the keys needed to unlock and access their data can reside here in the US, while that equipment is deployed in locations around the globe. Our goal for this customer is to ultimately provide a CSFC accredited solution for 2 independent layers of FIPS compliant encryption to protect their most sensitive data. The dual layer encryption capability will provide our customers with the power to store their top secret data with both a FIPS compliant hardware-based encryption layer as well as a second additional independent software encryption layer that is also FIPS compliant. Each layer requires separate and unique keys which together are remotely managed here in the good old US of A. Together, this combination of hardware and software-based data encryption, when combined with remote key management, will provide an industry-leading capability to protect secret and top-secret data from the tactical edge to the data center core to the secure cloud for all of our DoD and IC customers. Thank you once again for joining us here at Insight 2020, and now I'd like to turn it back over to Lloyd.
Thanks, Jim. So in closing, I'd like to thank all of our presenters for their time today. We at NetApp would especially like to thank all the active duty, veterans, and those that support our community for their continued service and sacrifices. Thank you for attending Insight 2020 and specifically our DoD Birds of a Feather session.